Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 206. Today we've got the immense pleasure of having as our guest Jack Slingerland of kernel.us. Jack?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Cool. And I also want to introduce my co-host with Jonathan Denwood. Jonathan?
Oh, hi there, folks. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a support maintenance company that only works with WordPress. We're your trusted partner, aren't we, John?
Very trusted. Diving right into the interview, I want to ask you, Jack, how did you first get started with development? Is it something you started early on, or how did that come about?
That's a great question. So I've been doing development professionally for about 10 years now. But prior to that, as a young fledgling nerd, I used to build websites like back in '99. Like my first website I built, I think I was in like 7th grade or something like that. And I built a Star Wars website because who doesn't build Star Wars websites? It's in frames, I had like the star background, MIDI that played automatically and things like that. So yeah, that's how I got my start. And if you actually want to see that, you can go to my blog, and I restored it from the web archive. It's actually pretty fun to take a look at and get some nostalgia points.
Awesome.
Yeah, but after that, I figured I really like this web stuff, and I went to college and got my degree in computer science, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Very good. I want to ask you, your main product, Kernel, how did that get started, and what need were you trying to fill in the market?
Yeah, sure. So I don't really do a ton of WordPress development anymore. But for like the first 5 years of my career, I did PHP and WordPress almost exclusively. And back then, I was working at a marketing agency, and we had a whole bunch of different WordPress sites. They were hosted in like a huge array of different setups in different places. And I kept thinking that it is really hard to update themes and plugins on these sites. Like, it is just a huge pain to do that. And I thought it would be really great if I could hook into a WordPress update system and do that instead. But that was in, I think, 2010 when I had that idea, maybe 2011. And I never did it. I thought got busy, things happen. And then a couple of years ago, I was looking for a learning project. I wanted to learn more about the Node.js stuff, Mongo, some front-end development technologies, and I was like, I need a project. So that's how I learn things best. And I remembered the WordPress update idea I had. So I poked around the internet, found that there was really just one other person out there doing that, WP Updates. You guys probably have heard or remember them. And I was like, well, I mean, it works for them. I'm going to give it a go and see how it goes. Worst comes to worst, I'll at least learn some things. So that's kind of how I started doing kernel.
Excellent. And one question I want to ask you too, when it comes to that, for those who don't know what kernel is, go into a little bit more detail about what it is and how it works.
Yeah, sure. So kernel lets you, sorry, I should have had an elevator pitch ready before this. Kernel lets you hook into WordPress update system with your own private plugins and themes. So if you need to push an update out, it will look just like a regular update that comes from the WordPress repository. And that's really the core product, like providing plugin and theme updates for people. There's a bunch of tertiary things around it, like push to build, so you can wire up your Bitbucket or GitHub account, and as soon as you push a new version, it will automatically package it up, deploy it to kernel, and the update goes out. So that's pretty neat, just like license management, things like that. But the core product is just themes and updates, providing updates for them, because there are a lot of themes and plugins that can't be listed in the WordPress repository. For instance, you work at a marketing company and you're building themes for some Fortune 500 corporation, they're not going to let you list that theme in the WordPress plugin repository. Or, if you're a premium plugin developer, you obviously don't want to list your, hard work there either, unless you have a freemium thing going. That's another situation.
So basically, to sum up, it gives you a place to have updates that's private So if you're like a premium seller, or if you're doing like private work, it allows people to have like a private production deployment.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool, cool, cool. So when you were first designing this product, did you look at a product like WP Updates and take that as market validation?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that. I saw what they were doing, and I was like, well, at least someone's doing it. So I don't really need to do too much research there. I think that when people are doing research on a product they're going to build, they start to worry when they see that someone out there is already doing that. But I think people forget that markets are pretty large, especially WordPress. I mean, like a quarter of the web runs on WordPress. Like, there's plenty of room for everybody, especially if you differentiate yourself and do a really good job of, what you're building. So yeah, I did take it as market validation. But like I said, when I started it, it was a learning project. I didn't go in expecting to, make money or have customers or anything like that, but it just kind of turned out that way in the beginning.
So, when did you realize that Kernel US was going to be a product that you could actually have a viable side income from?
Oh man. So I think I never, I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm pretty self-deprecating. I never thought it would, honestly. I was like, oh, no one's going to give me money. It'd be crazy. But it turns out that after I had like the MVP done, I posted it on like Hacker News, Reddit, a couple forums, on Twitter, things like that. And, I had like this flood of like 20 or 30 people sign up for it. And I was like, whoa, people are actually interested in this. And then people actually, and back then it was just as an alpha, and it was like a private alpha, so like people couldn't pay for it, nor would I let them at that point, because it just wasn't in great shape. And as soon as they signed up, I was like, man, this could actually be a real thing people are willing to pay for. So I think that was like the first realization that it might be something serious. And then the next realization was after I went through the alpha and then I exited the beta, I had like, I don't know, maybe like 20 active users at that point. And when I sent out the email saying, all right, guys, we're switching it from beta to like full on, GA, here's where you sign up and put your credit card, and people actually did it. That was a big moment. My wife and I went out to dinner that night. So it was a neat experience going from people just dinking around with your alpha and beta to them actually giving you money.
And that brings up a great thing. When you were first launching it, you had kind of a tight scope, and you were solving a specific problem. What sort of advice around that area would you give people who are trying to develop their first either WordPress product or services, a software product?
I would say the first thing would be like listen to your customers, like once you actually have them, listen to them. But prior to that, ruthlessly cut scope. Just cut scope away from the product as much as you can until you're at like a very core thing. Like I wanted to be able to have plugin and theme updates at first, and I didn't even do that. I just went just for plugins. Like that's the minimally viable piece that I had. And to do that, I had to have, a web server. So I built just the minimum boilerplate around that. And on the front end, like I didn't even have like password resets or anything, or like a sign up. Like people would just enter their email and I'd spin up an account for them. So it was very, very minimal. And I mean, if you follow like the lean startup and lean like product methodologies, that's more or less what's preached. But it's really, in practice, it's kind of hard to do. You see possibilities and you just want to dive into them. And like I've numerous times throughout the process, like I'd start like writing some code that was not necessary, and I have to reel myself back in. And it was worth it though, being able to focus on one thing, and then that eventually led to slowly expanding scope. But it's definitely ruthlessly cut scope. That was one lesson I learned pretty early on.
One thing that is very interesting in what you said is you were talking about early days, you were manually spinning up accounts for people. And one of the things that I've heard you mention before is when you're first launching, sometimes taking on technical debt is a necessity, if only to just get things done. and get to the finish line of pushing something out. Do you want to talk and expand a little bit on that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm one of those super pragmatic people when it comes to coding. Like I don't follow like I don't have any like zealotry when it comes to like programming languages or paradigms or frameworks. I mostly just want to get things done, and that is it's hard to do as a like good engineer to take on technical debt, but knowing when to do it is also really important. I think when you're building out an MVP product, take on all the technical debt you can. Like you'll pay it back later if it's successful, but if it's not successful, you're out nothing. And that was a big realization for me. Like for the alpha, I don't even want to explain how bad the code base looked. But once I realized that it was actually a product that people would use, I started paying the technical debt back. But I wouldn't ever have done it before then. Like during the beta, I focused solely on paying technical debt, like getting a build process down so I could deploy in one key press, having a huge amount of unit integration tests because people are actually using and relying on it, building out the infrastructure so it's more reliable, et cetera, things like that. But in the beginning, like take on all the debt you can. And if there are solutions available and you can afford them, buy them. Like don't build them yourself. It's a waste of time.
So the alpha release is really just about market validation, and then the beta release is more about paying back that technical debt.
Yeah, in my case it was. Some people might structure the release differently, but for me it was very much market validation, technical debt reconciliation, and then launching more publicly.
How do you find time and energy to first start a side project when you've got like a full-time life going on?
Yeah, so that one's kind of hard. I have that's really hard actually. I try and spend an hour a night working on it. At the beginning, it was kind of hard to even get that. Like, I mean, right now I don't have kids, so I do not have that as far as like a time suck goes in the best way possible. So I started out trying to do like an hour a night. And my wife wasn't really too keen on that because she's like, you're at work, 8 hours a day, we should hang out and things like that. But then when I started making money, that was a little more easy to justify. But most of my time I spent working on it was on the weekends. I get up very early, like I'm up at 6 a.m. every day, even on the weekends. My wife sleeps until like 9:30 on the weekends. So I had like this 3.5 hour block on every Saturday and Sunday where I could just, dive in and get things done. But that also meant that I needed to know exactly what I was going to be doing in that time period. So having a decent sense of what you need to do and then planning out how to do it was really important to kind of optimally use my time.
No, totally. Another thing that I want to circle. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go to our break and then we'll continue from there. So we're going to go to commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be talking more with Jack Slingerland of kernel.us. See you in a second. We're coming back from the break. We're talking more with Jack Slingerland of kernel.us. One thing that I wanted to circle back to that we were talking about in the first part of the interview was goal setting. And one of the things that you were talking about is when you initially made the launch, people were putting in their credit card information. You and your wife went out to dinner. So that was goal. That was your first goal. So goal number 2, how did you kind of slowly expand the goals up?
Yeah, so I've done a whole bunch of other side projects in the past. Most of them were learning. Some of them were trying to be, startups. I didn't know anything about anything. You don't know what you don't know, so you learn that the hard way. But this project, I was like, I need to have reasonable goals. The first goal was I want to learn the technologies that I'm using, because at the very least that would be useful in my career. So, yay, that worked. The second goal, when people actually started using it, was I wanted my goals to be realistic. Like, it's okay to have really lofty goals. Like, I want to take down competitor X, but realistically that's not going to happen. So it's better to have less lofty goals that you can actually achieve and then move on to the next one. So I tried to do reasonable goals. My first one was I want to be able to take my wife and I out to dinner once a month, and not like McDonald's, something actually like nice. And when that happened, I was like, well, okay, what's the next one? And I was like, car payment? Sure. So that one took a little longer, but I could take my wife and out to dinner and make a car payment. And the next goal, which I'm not quite there yet, is, pay the mortgage on my house for a month. And, the goal after that will probably be something along the lines of mortgage plus bills. And then after that, it's like, hey, I can quit my job. So those, I try and set goals that are reasonable and are actually achievable. Otherwise, if you're just like, I want to get to $1 million in revenue a year, from the start, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Definitely. And something else I wanted to circle back to that you touched on just really briefly, and that's the imposter syndrome. And it's really something that afflicts a lot of us. How did you deal with imposter syndrome? Obviously, you've got a successful product out there right now, but how do you deal with it, and how widespread do you see that being in our industry?
Gosh, I would say it's fairly widespread in our industry. I think the best developers that I know have imposter syndrome. I think we're all very, very careful and humble. Like, we don't like to think that we're better than anybody or our product's better than anybody. We think that it could fail at any time. But I think that through experience, you learn to be confident too, just not at the cost of anything else. Like, it's okay to be confident in your product. Like, I built a product that is making money. I'm confident in my ability to do that, at least for this product, maybe not for another one, but just for Kernel, I'm confident in it, and I'm confident in what I know. But I also know that I don't know everything. So you have to balance between like being humble and being confident. And I feel like people in our industry tend to go, more towards imposter syndrome than they do confidence. I really think we would all benefit if everyone was just a little bit more confident.
I think it afflicts developers more than other people in the industry, and it might just be like, how people fall on the spectrum of like what kind of skills and temperament that they have. Because people who are more like pure developers like yourself, they tend to be more into that. And that leads me to my next question, which is, as a developer, how did you get out there and start to market your product? How difficult was that?
Oh man, that's the toughest one for me. I'm a super introvert. My wife pokes fun at me for it occasionally, and it's tough, really tough. Like, you have to be able to just accept rejection really well, and that's hard for an introvert. I mean, it's hard for anybody, but for an introvert who's like putting themselves out there for the first time, getting rejected is really hard, but you just have to do it. Like, for me, the first bit of marketing that I ever did for Kernel was on Twitter. Like, I more or less spammed the WordPress hashtag, and someone complained about that, but that's fine. And that was really it. I put it out there in Hacker News, and if you've ever been there, the commenters there are just absolutely ruthless. So if you can survive the Hacker News comments, or like the Reddit subreddit comments, you're probably fine. Like, just if you can grow thick enough skin through that, like, just put yourself out there. It'll be fine. Like, nothing's gonna happen. And that was a hard realization to come by, but you kind of gain experience doing it, and it hurts less every time.
Yeah, don't read the comments.
Yeah, don't read the comments. Oh man, it's just flames nonstop.
I've got a question. Most of the things you read is that a lot of people get totally overwhelmed when they're one shop like yourself trying to build something really fantastic. You get inundated with support tickets. So has that been a problem, or been the people you're aiming the product at are mostly other developers? Has this not been a major problem?
It's kind of ebbed and flowed. And I think that the way I structured like the release of Kernel kind of helped me with that. When it was in alpha, like, I had no obligation to do anything, right? Like it was just like, hey, this is an alpha product. It's going to have bugs. Help me fix them, and we will, be better together. And when I went into beta, I started writing a ton of unit integration tests because I wanted ultimately for support not to consume my life. So writing a whole bunch of tests to make sure that the product was stable and did what it's supposed to do. I also have extensive documentation so people can help themselves, which it seems to help a lot. Like I think most developers, which, the kernel is targeted at because it's a developer tool, would much rather read the documentation than reach out to somebody and, deal with a person. So I tried to make those two things very good. And then, the third thing was, as soon as a support request comes in, I try and answer it as fast as possible, even if I don't have an answer, just to get it on my plate and let them know that, you're heard, I'm working on it, here's an ETA. And then as far as like organizing things, I have a Trello board and I have a backlog that has so many things in it. But, I go through it probably once a month and reorganize things, drop things off that aren't relevant anymore, and I just pull from the top. You have to try and not get overwhelmed, and being very active about managing your workflow is one of those things that you have to do.
Yeah, it was actually one part of my WP team, one of my developers that suggested your product to us, and we've been using it ourselves, and it's fantastic. But
thanks.
So the support documentation, that's rare for a developer to really spend time on documentation, and it's one of the things that impresses me about your product. So was that a real conscious decision based on your past experience using other people's products?
Yeah, absolutely. I find I did a lot of work in the Python and Django ecosystem, and if you've ever used Django or heard of it, its documentation is second to none. And that is probably one of my favorite projects ever, just because you can find out how to do anything from something trivial to something very like obtuse, and it's always there. It's always easy to find, and that is something I wanted to have kernel be. I wanted it to be like self-serve, and if it never gets to the point where I can quit my job, and I'm tired of working on it for some reason, I would love to be able to just let it coast on its own, and people can help themselves as much as they want with me just doing like regular maintenance work. But yeah, the documentation thing was a very conscious decision because I didn't want to have to deal with handhold every single customer that signs up into trying to get their product set up.
That's great. So what's the future for the product in the next 6 to 12 months? Are there any major improvements that you've got on the roadmap, or things that you would like to do?
Yeah, I've been thinking about kind of expanding the license management portion of kernel. That was kind of a bolt-on. It was a customer request initially. That's another thing that's worth talking about. Most of kernel's features were customer requests, so always listen to your customers. But I would really like to flesh out license management more. I feel like there's a lot of work I could do there, and it seems reasonably popular amongst a subset of customers. So I think it'd be a big win for me. But I just finished the feature flagging feature, which was a really long slog. So I'm kind of taking a couple weeks off from kernel just to like simmer down, and so I can get some energy and then dive back into it.
Yeah. Well, we basically use it for the integration, the continuous Git deployment. That's what we're using it for, actually. Yeah,
that's been a really popular feature. That's another one that I want to make a little bit better. Like I think once you have everything set up, it works as expected. But I'd like to get to the point where I can automatically create the webhooks that you need to like trigger builds and things like that. Like I'd really like it to be like press a button, select your plugin or theme, and you're done, and it'll just work. And maybe, tell you if you don't have like the kernel.version file in it, or, maybe you want to add the changelog.json file, and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of incremental improvements that I plan on making over the rest of the year, but I don't have any huge brand new big bang features. I would also kind of like to refresh the landing page. I feel like I have enough features now that it could probably be multiple pages.
Yeah, I think so. So, what's the main thing you've learned so far through this process?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think be patient and listen to your customers are probably the biggest things. Like, and also scope. Like, just you have to cut scope all the time. Like, I mean, I learned that in my day job, but not having a team around you telling you, hey, you're going off the rails and you need to cut scope. It's a very good and very hard experience, like, to cut scope on your own. And then the customers have been amazing. Like, Kernel's customers are just great people. They're really great to interact with. They're helpful. Like, they have a problem, they email me and we get through it. So, like, I think that it's kind of restored my faith in humanity a little bit. From a business perspective. Like, you hear horror stories of, like, awful customers doing awful things, and I haven't had that experience. And I think that is partially because the WordPress community is so, I don't know, it's like human. It's everybody realizes that there's a person behind the keyboard and tries to keep it civil, which is quite refreshing.
Yeah, keep it civil. We're going to wrap it up now, folks, for the podcast part of the show. We'll be continuing our discussion, which you'll be able to see on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel or on the website. And there'll be a full set of show notes and transcription of the show on the WP-Tonic website. So, Jake, I'm almost losing my voice there. How can people get hold of you?
You can email me at jack@kernel.us, or you can follow me on Twitter at Slingerland.
That's great. And John, how do people get hold of you?
You can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. You can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_. How did the fine people get a hold of you, Jonathan?
It's quite simple, folks. You can get me on Twitter. That's at Jonathan Denwood. You can also get me on the Facebook, the WP-Tonic Facebook page. We've got all the videos on the Facebook page as well. And you could email me. I do answer my email personally, not straight away, but I do answer. And that's at jonathan@wp-tonic.com. And you do the ending, because you always do the endings much better.
Okay, yeah. So, and again, reminding people, if you're getting value from this show, be sure to leave a review in iTunes. We would definitely appreciate it. And for the WP-Tonic posse in effect, we're saying peace out and get your dose.
Right, we're going for our bonus content then. You just crack me up, John. He does a great ending, doesn't he?
I did not expect that. I was expecting something much more tame, and then you busted. You completely blew my mind.
It is early, but we do try and do that. What John does. John's been a bit busy lately, knocking out websites left, right. Have you considered taking on, a partner or taking on some investment money to push this forward a bit quicker?
I've thought about it, and I don't know. I've had a couple people reach out to purchase Kernel, and I don't know. Some of it has not interested me. Right now, I'm pretty happy with where it's at. Investment money to make it go further might be nice, but it is kind of a pretty niche product, and yeah. I don't know if people really would invest in it. So it's kind of, I don't know. Like if other portions of it took off and the niche was larger, maybe that would be the case. But I don't know. I've been kind of on the fence about it. It's not really a big priority for me.
Well, I was just wondering, basically as a WordPress product, it is niche, isn't it? But you've had other people that started off in the WordPress sector, and then they've made it more of a SaaS model, which you already are. But what I mean is they've expanded it, like the Get functionality. You could expand that so you could be utilized on what content management system you're utilizing, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually interesting you mentioned that, because that was part of the goal for the feature flagging stuff that I did, is that it's all API driven. It's not WordPress specific. It just happens to be managed inside of kernel. So eventually I would like to kind of shop that around to other ecosystems. But that was a long haul. So I'm really burnt out on that for right now. So
well,
it's summer. I'm taking a break.
Optin Monster is the perfect example. It started off as a WordPress plugin, and now Thomas and Zai, they moved that so it supports multiple different content management systems. And I don't know what you personally feel. I think, for somebody with your technical background, setting up Git and GitHub isn't a problem, but I still think the whole setup of those kind of systems are still too hard, really.
Yeah, I agree. There's every time that we onboard a junior developer here at work, like especially if they're fresh out of college and they don't have any experience with version control, like they're like, why am I typing these magic commands? They mean nothing to me. Or like, oh, what do you mean continuous deployment or continuous integration? The learning curve is steep in our industry just to get really productive. It takes years to figure it out, and being able to, I don't know, kind of like grease the skids there would be nice.
So you're big into the JavaScript world. Obviously this is a big professionally at work and in your core product as well. So this has been a big subject with the REST API, and Matt saying that if you want a continuous future in WordPress, you should start learning JavaScript. And you've got the ongoing, what are the best libraries, the technology. Got any insights based on your own experience on if somebody big in WordPress, what are the best ways of getting into JavaScript?
Yeah, that's a deceptively deep question.
Yes, I thought
so yeah, I mean, like you said, like I chose JavaScript on the back end for kernel instead of PHP just because I wanted to learn Node.js, and that's worked out well. But as far as front end, that seems more relevant to the WordPress ecosystem. Getting involved with JavaScript is difficult because it's changing so fast. But I would probably pick a framework, maybe like React/Redux, or I know Vue.js is very popular in the PHP and WordPress ecosystem. Just pick one of those, read the documentation, and then find a starter kit for one of those and build a project off it. That way you don't get bogged down in all of the Webpack configuration and all. It's just a giant mess of things that you have to figure out, and if someone figures that out for you, it makes the process of learning the front end development way easier. Not having to worry about TSLint or ESLint rules and some black magic Webpack configuration is really invaluable. We've wasted lots and lots of man hours at work here where I'm at trying to do that.
Can you explain that bit in a little bit more detail? Why that weight consumes so much time, and what you were actually talking about there?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Webpack takes your JavaScript project. It helps you with importing modules so you can modularize it, but it also smashes it all together and creates bundles, and then it will shake the tree and remove any functions from the bundle that you aren't using. So if you're using React, maybe you're only using 15% of the library. It shakes out all the stuff you don't need, reduces your bundle size. And getting that set up right can be really hard and really tedious. It's like learning a programming language in itself. So that's why I always recommend starter kits, and their Angular has a CLI, React Redux has a CLI command line interface, so you can just do super simple commands like React create project, and it spins one up and it handles all of it for you. So that's probably the best way to go. And also, you don't want to get stuck doing things that don't matter. Like if you're building a product, is configuring Webpack making you money, or is like doing customer features making you money? So you have to remember that. Like it can be fun to dive into those things, but realistically, you're not doing benefit to yourself or your customers.
Got a question, John?
Yeah, one last question maybe, and we'll let Jack get on his way. But recently, Joshua Strebel of Pagely, he wrote an article, and it was talking about why he's not worried about the WordPress economy. And apparently, there's a lot of people, you know, wringing their hands and worried about, you know, that the low end is falling away, and they're not getting enough clients, their products aren't selling. What is your take on how the WordPress economy is doing, and do you see it in distress, or is it just maybe the market adjusting itself?
Gosh, I really don't know. I think that the WordPress economy has like always been pretty vibrant. And I mean, when it has as much market share as it does, it's, you know, it's hard not to be. I think maybe it is adjusting itself a little bit. It is fairly easy to get into WordPress development. So you do have this flood of, I don't know what the right word is here, so I'm not going to say anything. A flood of people coming into the market that can do the work at, you know, a lower price. So it's probably, I think it's some market forces at play, honestly. And you're going to have that in any market. Like when it's new, if you know it, you're probably going to get paid a lot if it's popular. And as time goes on, more people pick it up, you get more people working in it, and then, you know, prices go down. And that seems, you know, pretty standard across most, you know, programming ecosystems that I've been involved with.
Yeah.
And I think for most people though, if they can learn the JavaScript stuff and, you know, using the WordPress REST API to build their things, like they will have a much better time than being kind of stuck in, you know, classic plugin development.
No, I feel that.
Well, I think even in the plugin development, you know, there's still quite a bit of traction. But definitely, I think, you know, you're totally right. If you can learn the REST API and link it with some JavaScript skills, I don't think you're going to be unemployed anytime soon, are you?
No, and that'll make you very marketable even outside the WordPress ecosystem. Like everybody needs a JavaScript developer, for better or worse.
Right, Jake, thanks for coming on the show. It's been fascinating, hasn't it, John? And I just thought it's a great product. We use it ourselves, so I highly endorse it. And I think you've given some great insight about how one person can build a really effective service and product in 2017.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great. I've never done a podcast before, so you guys are the first.
Well, I think you're gonna get some more invites pretty soon. Actually, everybody listens to everybody else's shows, so with the caliber of your product and that, be ready for some more invites pretty soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
So we're gonna go.
Thank you, Jack.
We're going to leave now the live show, and we'll see you next week, folks. Bye.